It's that time of year again. We need to do this more often, but it is very exciting to have Mackenzie Dawson, who is books editor at New York Post, on to talk about what she's reading, what she's looking forward to, and just to get excited about the 2018 must-reads. Welcome back to Reading with Robin, Mackenzie
Thanks so much for having me on, Robin.
You're welcome. I feel like we have known each other for quite a bit of time at this point.
I know, we have.
And one day, I hope that we'll meet.
We will meet in person.
IRL. I know. I love reading your columns. I mean, people that listen to Reading with Robin know that the New York Post is one of my first stops of the day.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, always. And I check in several times because the headlines change throughout the day. And there was a big book on the other day, Getting Off. Was that the name of it?
Yes.
Yeah, and I saw the article and I said, well, this must be a book. And then I kept reading along, and I've seen a lot of coverage. You get pitched so often. Can you talk a little bit about your job and how you decide what you're going to share, and just how many books you sift through on an average week even?
Sure, I would love to. So basically, I would say that the way we cover books in the New York Post is not the typical books coverage. We don't run reviews per se. Mm-hmm. Instead, I'm kind of the person who's looking for books that are going to make for really good articles for our readers. Mm-hmm. So we're not reviewing them in a kind of voice of God, way where we're saying this is bad, this is good. I'm kind of looking at upcoming titles and whether or not I think they would work in our pages, either as like a straight feature on the book, mm-hmm. So the article that we did on Getting Off was that kind of thing, where we told the story that is being revealed in the memoir, about a woman's porn addiction, and we kind of, take some of the interesting bits. In this case, that was not difficult because the whole thing was interesting. And we just, kind of write our own narrative based on that, the kind of narrative that would hopefully make a reader say, wow, I really want to, buy that book. We also, I work with a lot of authors to have them write original op-eds for us. So if I see that someone has written something nonfiction, and it's about, let's just say, I'm just going to toss something out, sure. Prison reform or something. Mm-hmm. I will work with that author to say, do you want to come up with something that's 800 words that, you touched on in the book that you wished you had gone into a little bit more detail, or, something like that. And I'll kind of work with the writer and have them write something specifically for us. We also do excerpts.
Yeah, and that is such a huge lift for an author to have an original essay in the Post. And then,
I hope
of course,
so.
Books coming. Oh, absolutely. Who doesn't read the Post? I mean, if you're not reading the Post, you're missing a whole lot. And I'm on the phone with Mackenzie Dawson. She's books editor at New York Post. And I always go to NewYorkPost.com, or I pick up the paper when I'm out and about. But it's always been a very big part of my day, and I don't like to miss any of the big stories. And certainly reading the way that you just talked about, the way you incorporate a book into an article, it is really always a book I'm going to want to read. I mean, they're just so well done, and they are so interesting. You're welcome. So
for instance, to just give you another example of that,
mm-hmm.
the book that you and I had just mentioned earlier, Grist Mill Road
yes.
by Christopher Yates, we had him write an op-ed for us this past Sunday, because to write Grist Mill Road, one of his main character worked at a paper that, sounds suspiciously like the New York Post. So in order to do that, obviously, if you're writing about an industry that isn't yours, you want to make it as accurate as possible. And
sure.
so he had a a bunch of conversations with our Metro editor to get the scoop from her on, like, okay, now what would, how would you guys cover that? What would that meeting be like? And as a result, when I was reading the book, I was, thinking, oh, this is all very accurate.
Right?
So, that's mission
glaring.
Accomplished on that.
So I think that's so cool. And then when it's a field that you're in and you're reading a book, it is a different sense of how you're reading it, depending on what the topic is, certainly. And I know for myself, when I'm reading books that center around writers, publishing of a book, that sort of storyline, I think, wow, yeah, it's way worse than that, or that's pretty close, or they were being kind, when it's something that you're very familiar with. It's you have a little extra something, you're tied to it in a little bit of a more meaningful way, or you have more in it. So it's a different kind of read.
Just speaking of, industries and covering different industries, one of the books that just came out, I guess just last week.
Yes, I saw that article.
I'm so excited about. Yeah, Need to Know. No, sorry. That's a different book.
This Could Hurt.
This Could Hurt.
Yes, I saw that article.
Yeah.
I mean, Jillian Medoff has been getting so much well-desered praise for This Could Hurt. Your article was wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I read it back in the fall, I guess.
Yeah.
It's This Could Hurt by Jillian Medoff, and I read it, and I was just it's this portrayal of a human resources department, and that is not something that you tend to read about a whole lot.
No.
And then, even if you don't tend to see a lot of realistic portrayals of corporate America in general, I would say.
No, you don't.
And this one she could have stopped at just being kind of a send-up, because it's very funny.
Yes. And Jillian is hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, it's so funny. But she didn't stop at that. Instead, it is both funny, but it also has so much heart to it. And it's very moving, and that was not what I was expecting when I picked it up. So I just think it's a real, and of course the reason she was able to, paint that picture so well is that she's actually a consultant in her day job. So she, knows this world and has had plenty of experience in that world.
She sure does. She knows it well, and I have been such a fan of her books for so many years. She, in fact, is reading tonight at Point Street Reading Series in Providence.
Fun.
Yeah, she is. The book came out last week, and she's reading tonight. And I first met her when I read her book Hunger Point. I think maybe it was 20 years ago. I don't know. 17 or 18, a long time ago. Then Good Girls Gone Bad, and then I Couldn't Love You More. And I just love her writing, and the way you describe the humor and the heart is so Jillian. And This Could Hurt. She's also on the cover of Kirkus Review.
I saw that.
Right?
That's a great get.
Very excited for her. So I read your article about the book. I was so excited to see that you covered it, and go to New York Post to pull it up. It's called How a Horrible Corporate Job Led to an Awesome Novel. It's like when things are going on like that, you think, is this going to make for good material somewhere? You don't always think of it when you're in the thick of it, I guess, but it's
exactly
wonderful, right, when you can see your way through to a bigger purpose for your misery, from your misery. Yeah. A greater purpose for the misery. I am on the phone with Mackenzie Dawson of the New York Post. She's the books editor. It's an amazing job. I mean, how many books do you get? People always want to know. They ask me all the time. Wow. I'm asking you, what do the stacks of books look like in your office? Okay,
so I mean, the books that I get, like just straight up books. I mean, I get hundreds of them a week. But in terms of like I know pretty quickly whether or not it's something that we could conceivably cover or not. So the stacks of books, I have a room that is literally underground. It is underneath the building, the office building,
right.
And I call it my book bunker. And
I like that. I think we talked about this because I would love to be holed up in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Bunker. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
And I have all of the shelves, and there's a sign with a month, for every shelf, and I just kind of organize things that way. And that way, I'm a pretty visual person, so if I have to see the book on the shelf to remember, when it's coming down the pike and that kind of thing. Exactly. I sometimes have to see the cover.
Yeah. I mean,
otherwise I'm like, wait a minute.
Did I? Oh, I think that sounds familiar. And also they change the covers. We get the galleys.
Yes.
So sometimes I've had galleys change, received second galleys where I'm like, wait, you didn't. It's only a galley and you didn't like the cover, and then they reprint them. And I think that's always kind of an amazing thing. And how far ahead are you reading? Are you reading now for?
About, let me see, it's January now. I'm reading through like May, I would say.
Yeah, there's so many good books. Oh, my goodness. You just started to mention also Karen Cleveland's Need to Know.
Yes. Have you read it? I emailed you about that a while ago because I was like, oh my God.
I think that's why I got it. You know what? And I was trying to remember because I knew that this was something I think you might have told me about this in August or September.
I think I did.
Yeah, and I'm interviewing her, I think next week. The book comes out on the 23rd, I think, right?
Yep.
I think. Yeah. So no, I'm glad you reminded me because I couldn't remember if it was one of the publicists who emailed me and said, put this on your radar, but it was Mackenzie Dawson. Talk a little bit about that book.
So Karen Cleveland wrote this on her maternity leave from the CIA.
Just when you have a little extra time.
Right off the bat, I was
maternity leave from the
pretty
CIA.
Amazing.
Oh my goodness.
So she was a an analyst at the CIA, and she basically she wrote this novel about a woman who is working at the CIA, and they all of a sudden she's working on tracking down several Russian deep cover agents in the U.S. and she kind of opens up these files that have pictures of the agents, and her husband is one of them. And she has kids.
I mean, can you imagine? What a setup is that?
A house. I mean, the whole thing. And this was one of those books where I think the press release said something like, I read this in one night. And usually when you get those, you think, well, any publicist is going to say that that's the case. But I literally did that.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you reminded me because I love to be able to, thank the person for bringing me this amazing book. I might have taken a couple of days, but now I'm remembering when I read it and why. But it is one that you could just stay up because you have to know, and you can't believe. I mean, just that setup right there, how that you put yourself in that kind of position of finding out something.
Yep.
So horrific. Then do you look at the picture well, if you look at it this way, maybe it's not that guy.
That's what happens.
Right.
She ends up having to make all of these decisions about, am I going to be loyal to my country, or am I going to be loyal to my family? And the truth of what that is, and all of that. I mean, it's just such a great book, and it has, just when you think you've kind of identified the twist, then they throw you for another loop. And
which is the best part of a thriller, right?
Yeah.
A psychological thriller. And I see it's been sold, and Charlize Theron to star, which sounds perfect. And I wonder when she's having another baby, so she can write the. She left it open for a little bit more. I just think that is an amazing thing. The things that women do, just constantly, the bar is just as high as it can go. I mean, have a baby, write a little thriller. Go back.
I could barely empty the dishwasher, when I was on my maternity leave.
It's so overrated to be doing those sorts of things. Sit down and write something like this. I mean, I'm very excited to chat with her. I think it's Monday. The podcasts come out Tuesdays, as it's Tuesday, but I don't ever, remember the order when I'm taping them. But I thank you very much for that one. Do not miss this one. Need to know. Now, will there be a story in the Post about this one? Is
there will indeed.
Oh, good. Well, we will look forward to that. And I'm chatting with Mackenzie Dawson of the New York Post, so look for that. So that'll be out soon, and people can check back. And it's funny, I'm looking at, of course I brought my books to look at while we chatted. I always like to know if one that I loved will come up in your list. And what's another one you'd like to talk about?
How to Stop Time, by Matt Haig. This is coming out, this is coming out February 6th. And this is about a man who, he's not immortal, but he just ages so slowly that he's now been alive for, I can't remember exactly, but I think maybe 400, 500 years or something.
Give
so
or
it's
take.
He can die, but he lives centuries. Wow. And obviously that would necessitate one moving a fair amount as the people in your area start to realize that you're not aging.
You need to keep it right. It's not something you want everybody to know about. So you got to keep it moving. That's so cool.
So he basically moves throughout different times in history. So he's living in Shakespeare's time for a while. He meets Shakespeare. He just kind of skips about, but it's not chronological. It's not like, it's not like he's trying to tackle every, historical time period. He's just picking and choosing a few. And
sounds good.
It's so much fun.
Oh wow!
It's like. It's just so, it's incredibly fast-moving and really quite lovely.
Wow. I will. So, and the author again is
Matt Haig.
Okay. And the title?
How to Stop Time.
How to Stop Time.
Which I believe is also being made into a movie.
Of course it is.
Because all books are being made into movies.
They are. And I know that I've been in the theater where people say, oh, I didn't know they made a book out of this. You've heard that when people see the movie and oh, I heard there was a book made out of this. It's just so painful to hear those things. But that definitely has movie written all over it. And I am very glad to hear that is true, in fact. But I'll read the book first. I think, you know what, I'm pretty sure I have that here. That Matt Haig sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So I will look for that one as well. And have you read, I don't know if you've read An American Marriage, Tayeri Jones? This was one.
Not yet. No, that's definitely on my list, though, of things to read.
That one I think I read over the summer. And because the hardcover just came and I thought, wait, I've read this.
Yeah.
And I remember.
Do you ever find yourself vaguely surprised that the books haven't come out yet? Because you're
so
I read that so long ago.
I know. Yes, I do. And I especially when a cover looks familiar or it looks like another one, and then I think, wait, did I read that? But when this one arrived, I think I read this in July or something, but I loved it so, and it comes out on February 6th, and I can't really tell you that much more about it. But I do know that it would make for a great op-ed piece because I remember the husband was incarcerated and something really very interesting. So that's An American Marriage. Mackenzie, we'll let you stick with talking about the books. Definitely. I just remember, that's what I remember. I remember I loved it, and the part about the husband was really quite gripping, and thinking that it would make for a really good story. And who knew, another movie. But I don't know if it is, but it seems like it would absolutely be a wonderful movie. And I'm chatting with Mackenzie Dawson. You can find her on New York Post, and you can go to newyorkpost.com and check out all the articles. You have a lot of really great must-reads. So you do that every week.
I do that every week, yes.
And you do like five or six?
Six, yep.
Six. That's hard to do. I mean, I know this is a silly question, like paring them down because you're keeping them in the week that they're coming out. And there's so many books.
Well, so first off, I just keep kind of a master list and throughout the year, so that way as I have exchanges with publicists and, as I read things, I will just kind of plug them in for the week of their publication date.
Sure.
What I try to do also, and I don't know that I always succeed with this, but I also try to make sure that I'm having a real mix.
Yeah. No, you do. Oh, you absolutely do.
Thank you.
I love reading what you put together because I always go, oh, that was really good.
Thank you.
You cover a lot of genre and something for everybody. I think you do a really great job at that.
Well, thank you very much. I
welcome.
try. I'm trying to kind of be cognizant of the fact that obviously the Post has all sorts of different readers, and not everyone is going to be into the specific things that I'm recommending. So I'm always trying to kind of mix it up a little bit.
It's a lot harder than people might think. I mean,
it really is.
It's really, really hard, actually.
I have to even make sure that I will look at the things, and I will make sure that I'm not playing favorites with a specific publishing house.
Yeah.
If I look and I see that I have listed, 3 titles from St. Martin's or something, then 2 of those have to go.
Yeah,
and I might shuffle them into another week where I have less going on. But I try to make sure that I'm kind of spreading the love out equally, and especially with smaller publishing houses, because I'm aware of the fact that they don't have as much money to spend on publicity efforts. Mm-hmm. So, that's not fair to the author that just because their publishing house doesn't have PR efforts that I don't hear about it. So I just try to cast a pretty wide net.
You do, and I think people are looking for recommendations. Really, there are so many books, and you just want to go by a trusted reviewer, somebody who is in the know about books, whether, there's a whole range of people who do certainly in different ways. And I think that it's indisputable how much more attention a book will get when it's out there. And certainly when they're in your columns, they're getting a lot of attention. And I think that that's so appreciated, and you want to sort of spread it around. And it's not easy to do, and, everybody has their own methods, but it is such a huge boost for an author when they get that. And then, I love reading on, the Facebook feeds when authors will just see their book has been named somewhere and they didn't know, and it's so exciting, and it makes such a big difference. And so that's one of the things I love about your columns. I haven't read this yet, Tips for a Living, but it's on my, it's been in my pile. But the backstory is really interesting. If you want to talk about that one a little bit.
So this is written by Spalding Gray's ex-wife, and the book is just about a woman who has just gone through a very public divorce from a famous artist, and it's the kind of divorce that's been in the news and the headlines and that kind of thing. And he has the ex-husband has left her for his mistress, who is now pregnant. So the woman has the ex-wife has basically moved to a small town outside the city, and is kind of trying to just start things over and make a new life for herself. And then the ex-husband and his new wife buy a house in that same town, and so she's kind of like, you've got to be kidding me.
Right.
And then they are murdered, and she is a strong person of interest.
By location, of course.
Yes.
And matter.
Seems a little fishy.
A little bit.
And it's kind of one of those things where obviously everyone in town suddenly becomes, very suspicious of her. And it's one of those interesting narratives where you're kind of, you're wondering whether or not to trust her as a narrator.
Yeah.
And you're not really sure.
Narrator.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's what makes the interesting read all the more so. And that one's out by Lake Union, so it was nice to include that publisher as well. And there's so much more to talk about. Before I let you go, though, also out today is Mira T. Lee's Everything Here is Beautiful, which was one of my favorites. My daughter and I actually picked it for our Like Daughter, Like Mother book club, and Mira will also be appearing at the Point Street Reading Series tonight. I wish you could come. We have quite a party going on. I know. It's just a little bit of a distance, but we'll get you to Rhode Island one of these days. What was one of your favorite parts about Everything Here is Beautiful? It's don't miss this book, people. It is gorgeous.
Oh, I know. I don't even know. I sometimes have a hard time. This sounds so awful. I sometimes have a hard time, like, once I read something, I'll be, like, totally in the experience at the time. And then after I finish, I don't always.
Oh, I never do. Mackenzie, that's why I say it's like a thumbs up, and I only talk about the books I love. And I basically say, I love this book. You totally want to read it. I didn't finish it all that long ago. So otherwise, forget it. I told you, An American Marriage, Tayari Jones comes out in a few weeks. Loved it. Yep. There was something about the husband and being incarcerated. It was beautiful. That's my review. Don't miss it. It's really good. But I always feel like that's, I'm doing my part. Like people who like what I like. And I should also say, go to the Reading with Robin Facebook page, and you'll see a lot of these books on there. And the best way to find what you're doing is go to New York Post, NewYorkPost.com, pick up the Post and see what you're writing, see what Mackenzie is suggesting, and must-reads each week, which is one of my favorites, and also the different wrap-ups you do of, different genre or tie-ins, and like we were talking about the op-ed pages. But Everything Here is Beautiful. That is one that I think people are just going to – I'm sure it'll be a movie, too. I'll ask Mira when I see it. Nothing like putting the author on the spot. What do you think the chances are? And what's something on your radar, like going forward, or like you said you were reading in May?
So coming out in early April is the new Meg Wolitzer book, Female Persuasion.
Love
and
it.
I adore her. I think she's just great. And this did not disappoint.
No, it didn't. And it's a nice, thick one. And it's really good. I agree. That one comes out April
3rd, I think.
Yeah. And another awesome Riverhead, beautiful cover to celebrate that new book. Yeah, I love reading what you read and hearing what you're sharing, and it's always a pleasure to have you on. I could talk for hours. I know,
same here.
I know, it's like one of our favorite topics, and I know that you've got to get back to work. I have Point Street tonight. We're switching venues. We're going to be at Alchemy. We're like the wandering Point Street reading series, and luckily the authors will be there, the people will be there, and it'll be a lot of fun. And I wish you happy reading, and we'll check in every couple of months. We should probably do this more often.
We should.
Love having you on the show. Thank you so much. Mackenzie Dawson, New York Post. Happy reading.
Happy reading.